To take a wrong decision, you can always correct it, but to take no decision at all is a disaster. We never grudged that. If somebody came and said that he was getting a salary twice what he was getting at packages, we said, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sadia Khurram. I did my MBA from LUMS in 1996. Since then, I've mostly been associated with the telecom sector. I took a sabbatical, went to MIT in 2016, did another MBA in Innovation and Global Leadership. I am back with Jazz now. I am the VP of Marketing for the business segment at Jazz. And today I'm very honored to be here. I will talk to Babar Ali Sahab about his approach on business management and leadership, and how has it evolved over the span of your professional life, and also get your views on some of the current challenges that we are faced with.
You know, you went to school to study business. I also went to University of Michigan in 1947 to study business administration, but in those days business administration was a new subject, especially and the Americans were pioneers in starting this new discipline, which was, and I made some investigation. It was sponsored by various industries, especially the railways in America. They sponsored MIT, for instance, to provide them with engineers. That's how MIT came into being. And also, if you look at the history of the Harvard Business School, that was also sponsored by the railway industry in America to train young men who would manage the railways to run. But then, of course, from railways, it was other industry that sprang up, and they needed people with background and knowledge about finance, accounting, about marketing and various aspects of it. So my exposure in the beginning, I was already a graduate in sciences from Punjab University, from Government College Lahore, and prior to that I did my undergraduate at H. College. So then I started work, came back at the end of 47 and started work in early 48. I was sort of the errand boy in the family. Go and do this, go and find that person, go and meet that person, go and buy that equipment. So it was learning by doing. And then, of course, I got an opportunity to be a part of this setting up of packages, which was a joint venture with a Swedish company, which was a very well organized packaging company in Sweden, and we became their joint venture partners, and I was the family representative there. So there I really learned from the Swedes what management was all about, what responsibility there was, how to delegate, how to train, how to recruit people, how to provide support to the technical people. So it was a very interesting learning by doing things. And then, of course, later on, when I was managing director for about over 20 years, I had an opportunity to go to the Harvard Business School in the Advanced Management Program, which is a very senior one.
Yeah.
It's probably more senior than the Sloan program that you went to. And there, that really sort of opened my eyes that there was much to be learned, not in the classroom, but outside the classroom from your peers who were there. These people came from different background, different industry. There were many people from the Armed Forces of America, from their Air Force, Navy, Marines, people from the banking industry, people from industry as such, chemical industry, insurance, public relations, advertisement, and they were people from all over the world. So that again was a tremendously rewarding experience. And so, as you may have seen from the book that I wrote, one was always learning. You didn't have to go into a classroom to learn something, you learned in life itself.
Yeah.
And so I've enjoyed doing that. And of course, the biggest reward was to work with people with whom you shared your experience, and you tried to impart with them what you learned, and you hope your effort was really that somebody would take over responsibility of doing whatever you were doing, split it up into various sectors, and you develop those young men and women to help you achieve whatever you were trying to achieve, to manage.
Right. And it's always a great validation to be part of such global programs.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of learning from
yes, and then of course we have had the
parts of the
opportunity to have joint ventures with a number of leading companies of the world like Coca-Cola, Nestle, Mitsubishi, DIC, American Express, Hearst, later on Sanofi, different nationalities, French, Swiss.
Yeah, so it put you on the map.
German.
Yeah.
So that again was very rewarding. It has been a very rewarding experience, and one is learning all the time. And so that way it has been a very good journey.
Right. Okay, sir, you mentioned packages, so I'll take you back to the packages days. In your book, I read that you take a lot of pride in developing a very egalitarian culture at packages, and the fact that your management structure over there was very meritocratic and less hierarchical. So at a time when even admissions to some of the schools in Lahore were class-based, there must be quite a few people who would not have felt very comfortable in that environment. So if there are interesting anecdotes or observations from that time.
No, I mean, we selected people on the basis of merit only. We never questioned their religion, of course we checked their background in the sense, we preferred to hire people whose fathers were working people, not landlords or bureaucrats, and people who had a work culture in their genes. And of course, Packages was among the very early companies after partition in Lahore. There weren't too many industries at that time. So we were very lucky that we were able to recruit and attract young men with good qualification to join us. Not everybody stayed because meanwhile other industry had come up and other opportunities were there. And for somebody to have worked in Packages for a few years enhanced his market value, and we never grudged that. If somebody came and said that he was getting a salary twice what he was getting at Packages, we said go ahead, because we kept on recruiting youngsters. And if I were to sort of generalize it, of the 10 people that we would recruit in the white collar section, about 3 would last after 5 years, but they would then stay on for the rest of their lives.
Right.
Of course, with the blue collar worker, it was a different story. There 99% stayed on because there were few opportunities with them. And we tried to have there was no master employee relationship. It was very flat, as you said, very egalitarian environment. I remember within the first couple of years, we set up in the beginning everybody went home for lunch, but then we said, no, we don't want to waste time going home, let's have a mess where we'll be eating together. And initially we were, the people who were white collar, who were department heads or people who called themselves managers, we ate together. Then I said, why not invite our office staff to come and eat with us? So I remember one of my senior colleagues said, I don't want to sit next to my PA and eat with him or my stenographer. I said, I'll sit next to him, you don't worry. But then that thing disappeared because we never encouraged this kind of a thing. And the other was that I always, when I were interacting with people, I never said, how's my company doing? I always used to say, how's your company doing?
Right.
But we wanted them to feel that they were owners.
Ownership, yeah.
Yeah, the company belonged to them. And I still believe that there's a big distinction between a shareholder who is an investor and who's sitting at home and a person who's working in a company. He's really creating wealth for the shareholder.
Exactly.
And therefore there is no reason why he should not enjoy the benefits of the company's success. So we have tried to be as reasonable with the employees who came in, and that's how the group has grown and flourished.
Yeah, and it has been a very sustained trajectory of growth.
I mean, the company, if you look back anywhere in the world, if you look back, Packages has been there for 65 years. And so how many companies can look back with that kind of satisfaction that it's not smaller than what it was 65 years ago? It has enabled people to develop, and what to my mind is the most satisfying thing is that every individual that has worked at Packages, he's done better than his peers that who went into, for instance, they came out of the engineering university, they went into government service, or they went into other industry, and better than their parents. And what is still more rewarding is that their children are doing better than their parents.
Right,
They've gone to a better school, better college, better universities. There must be at least over 100 of our, or whom I call Packages, children who are studying and working abroad.
Right. So it's a beautiful example of social mobility.
Yeah, and we own everybody in the sense that we think that we are related to all of them, irrespective of whether they worked for us for 5 years or for 20 years.
Right. Okay, sir, talking about the blue-collared workers, your relationship with the union workers at Packages was very unconventional, right? So the relationship between management and labor unions all over the world is mostly fraught with mistrust and this.
Here also there was, but we overcame them because when the union was set up, I was very upset. But and I went to Sweden and I was talking to the managing director of a Swedish company. I said, I've got a union now. He said, congratulations. He said, I can't work without a union here because I can talk to 5 people and they take a decision on behalf of
all
500 people.
Force, yeah.
And you can't negotiate, or you can't sort of sit with 500 people. It's much better to negotiate people who really represent the unions. So we learnt to respect the union leaders, and of course the union leaders themselves have to learn a lot. They felt initially that they were a privileged class, they didn't have to work. They walked around the place with the chests out as they representing the blue collar worker. But we initially felt uncomfortable how they were strutting around the place, but then you respected them. They said you represent those. But then we did things which were really unorthodox in our whole approach. I'll give you an example. In the first 3 or 4 years of our existence, there was an Asian flu. And Irshad Hussain, who was my colleague at that time, and he was an engineer, he worked in the government, Harvard educated, and I persuaded him to give up his government service and be with us. I used to spend 2 hours every morning walking through the plant to look at everything, meet everybody. And on this particular occasion, when the Asian flu struck, we had people coming in the morning, later on their noses were red, and tens of these people would just fall down flat on the floor, collapsing. So Irshad said, you and I have been walking with these people and nothing happens to us. So we said, let's see why, let's analyze it. And we came to the conclusion because we were better nourished and these people were malnourished, though we were giving them food. And so we said, all right, we will build up their health. So we said, okay, what should we do? We said, let's give a glass of milk to every worker every day. And so we introduced this thing. We gave a glass of milk. And in those days, you know, the milk industry in this country didn't exist. So we bought a herd of buffaloes.
Okay.
And to make sure that we had pure milk. And we gave them a glass of milk for 10 paisas. Would you believe it, 60 years later, even today, every worker gets a glass of milk for 10 paisas. It costs us about 25 rupees for the glass of milk which you give for 10 paisas. There's only one condition: they can't take it home. They have to consume it on the factory floor. So we thought that this was one way of you know, making them healthy. The other thing I was very obsessed with right from the very beginning, I said, these are young people, and many of them, you know, as soon as they got a job, their parents felt that they were in a position to get married, and so they got married. And so we said, okay, they should get married, they should raise a family, but they should also have family planning. So in those days, you know, talking about family planning was a taboo.
Exactly.
You didn't talk about it, and you'll forgive me for what I'm going to tell you just now. So how to talk to them about family planning? So in those days it was mandatory that every employee, worker, blue-collar worker would get his salary in an envelope, in cash. Now it goes directly into their bank account and everything else.
Yeah.
And we said, all right, let's put condoms into the envelope with a chit in it that this is what it is meant for.
Right.
And we did that.
Yeah.
You know, it came as a shock, and the story traveled around. The ILO picked it up, and they invited me to an international conference to go and make a presentation in Delhi to tell them how we introduce family planning in the labor force. So these are things that we were never afraid of thinking outside the box. And so it's been a wonderful journey.
Yeah. So sir, reading your book, I noticed that you have very consciously cultivated a connection with the man on the street, right? By being part of their mass gatherings or being always accessible to your factory workers. So how has that shaped your perspective on life? What kind of richness or value have those connections added to your personality?
One is learning from everybody. I mean, if you never worked at packages, but you know, my door is never locked. There's nobody sitting outside my door. Anybody who wants to come in just opens the door and walk in. And if there's somebody else there, he waits till the other person goes out and he can walk in there. Nobody needs an appointment to come and see me. And I've never ever felt that any meeting with anybody was not rewarding. I learned something all the time. Or I either learned or taught somebody. So I've been not shy of meeting people, and so that's what I've done, and it's been a very agreeable experience.
Great. So Babar Sahab, 5 of your very successful ventures got nationalized in the Bhutto era, and then they were privatized again. So tell us more about that journey. How did it impact the performance of the business? What was it like recovering your businesses back from that phase?
Not every industry was privatized. You know, for instance, our automobile industry, where we had the Ford franchise, Ford, assembly of cars, trucks, tractors, that never got privatized. Our life insurance company was not privatized. The only company that was privatized and given back was Treat, the razor blade company. Packages was spared that, but I was nationalized.
Yeah.
I went into the public service, and that again was a very interesting journey. So, I mean, this was something which came as a shock, but you were a part of the large kind of nationalization program. You were not singled out. You were singled out for being of a size which was, you could call it large. We were maligned for being one of the 22 families. But other than that, packages kept on developing, growing, and when I came back, Mr. Bhutto had just been overtaken by Ziaul Haq, and so the opportunity of doing new things was there. So we went and set up the milk processing industry, and then Nestle came in there, and then other opportunities came. So I never look back. I always sort of see what is there to do today and tomorrow rather than yesterday.
The silver lining in the cloud.
I never sort of cry over spilled milk. That's days that is gone is a day that is lost.
The New York Times did an article on you, and I think it was titled "The Pakistani Capitalist Who is Running a Nationalized Industry."
Yeah.
And they said that they described you as a consummate salesman.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about that aspect of your personality, and what is your definition of a great salesperson?
I remember the first interview that in New York Times correspondent, he was based in, I think, somewhere in the Far East. He was visiting Pakistan, and I got a telephone call from the World Bank representative, and he said, "Would you please meet this World Bank this New York Times person?" And I said, "I'm happy to meet." I didn't know there was an article coming out of it, but I was as enthusiastic about the public sector responsibility that I had as if I owned the public sector, because I was very lucky. Mr. Bhutto, and I tell you, the bureaucrats that he had at that time looking after the public sector were very well trained, well equipped, and they gave me all the responsibility. There was no interference. I never got a telephone call that I should buy from X and I should employ Y. They left it to me, and of course I followed the protocol of buying things at the right price and hiring people on merit and things like that. But other than that, I didn't feel at all uncomfortable in the public sector. I treated as if I was in the private sector. I could take any decision within the parameters that I was responsible for, and I was very happy that even 10 years after I left the public sector, the Fertilizer Corporation was still running as the best corporation in the public sector, and tens if not hundreds of engineers and managers that we had trained went and managed the larger fertilizer industry, the Fauji fertilizer, the Angros, and today you have the Fatma fertilizer. You still have people who worked with me at that time. So that to me is a very rewarding kind of certificate for the work that one had done.
Yeah. So, sir, staying on this topic, you had a very impressive stint in the public sector, and you have mentioned in your book quite a few people who were really capable and competent. But when one looks around the public sector in Pakistan now, by and large, it's quite uninspiring. So what are some of the factors behind this degeneration, and is there a way to make a turnaround in the public sector?
No, my own feeling is, those days of nationalized industry are gone, and one has had an opportunity to study public sector industries not only in Pakistan but in other countries, both here and in India and in the West. The government should not be running any industry. That is my conclusion, because and especially today, it's not recognized that you can make a mistake. And if you are managing anything, if you take 6 decisions out of 10 correctly, you are doing a good job. And government does not recognize that you can make a wrong judgment and you get punished for it. With the result, you don't take a decision. And if you don't take a decision, it's disastrous for anything that you're managing.
Right.
To take a wrong decision, you can always correct it. But to take no decision at all is a disaster.
So there is no hope for the public sector?
No, I have constantly been voicing my opinion and advocating that the government should get out of managing anything which has to do with business, industry,
Right.
production,
Right.
because government should just be a facilitator, and we should have less of regulation, so that the private sector has the room and the space to work in a competitive way. Don't give any monopoly to anybody. Encourage competition, because competition, nobody likes competition, but it's your best friend. It keeps you on your toes. You have to
Exactly.
produce goods which are of right quality. The price has to be right, otherwise nobody buy it. So the best thing that the government can do is to encourage competition, not to give any monopoly to anybody.
So on nationalization, how did that change the relationship between labor and management? What stance did the labor adopt after nationalization? Because there was a lot of activism around that
There
period.
was a lot of unrest. People, the general slogan was that the factories belong to the workers, not to the owners. There were, there was a kind of a wave of one could call Bolshevism. That there was a small group of our eager managers also who wanted to stage a coup and take over the factory. But the factory had been going for about 15-20 years, and there was a lot of sane elements even among the labor, and they knew that this wave was not sustainable. So we rode the storm. We didn't lose our nerve. And I must say the administration was also very supportive. They knew that if you destroy a company like Packages, it will be a national loss. So they kept these Bolsheviks under check. And they got so much out of hand, and this young man who was heading the labor movement at that time, especially our Labour Party, he became a god in that area, not only in the factory, in the village, and he would insult ordinary people, insult their parents, their sisters, their mothers. And lo and behold, he was murdered by one of the people.
Wow.
We had no hand in it. I mean, we were totally surprised that this took place. And he was another laborer who was a leader among his, and this fellow went to jail for a long time. And when he came out of jail, he came to see me, and we greeted and we were friends. But it was an ugly time, and because we felt that we had done no wrong, we had no regrets. We rode the storm.
Babar Sahab, you have been a strong advocate of improving female representation in LUMS, that much I'm aware of. So how have you supported this cause in your professional life, and what are your views on the state of female participation in the workforce or the business affair?
We are, going out of our way. We are very proactive in recruiting women into our not only into the management cadre, into the blue collar workers, wherever it's possible. The government have to also change their rules and regulations, which were made maybe 200 years ago, that women cannot work after sunset. You know, I mean, you can't stop a factory in the evening, and you have to run factories round the clock, and women have to work in shifts and things like that. But you know, we in India are still sort of struggling with the old British labor laws. But in China, where they have made this tremendous progress of bringing women into the mainstream, they treat them on par with men, and they facilitate women, you know, working during the odd hours, and then of course they have to get married, they have to raise families. So now we provide facilities for bringing their children to work, and we take care of them, provide them whatever is required, you know, till they come of age to go to school. So all those extra efforts we are making. I was surprised that at LUMS today we have almost 100 kids that come in that category with not only just the faculty, but with other staff that are working at LUMS. They can bring their kids, and we take care of them, and we've in the process of setting up a very large facility that they can, you know, the children can be looked after irrespective of whether it is a maid's child or it's a professor's child. They have to be treated equally.
Right. No, that's amazing. So Babar Sahab, you have been at the forefront of you know, shaping government policy and also on the receiving end of government policy. So which government, and you have been at this vantage point since before Pakistan was created. So which government do you feel did the most in terms of laying out business-friendly policies? And what would be your advice to the current government?
I would say I would go back to General Ayub's time, and followed by that during Ziaul Haq's time. There was a much shorter route to the decision makers in Islamabad to redress your issues for the industry, not for yourself only. And so we have always believed in a level playing field and not asking government for any favors for your particular company, because we know that as soon as the government changes, the next one will take it away, and you are unnecessarily kind of a target because everybody talks about these things. And so we have always insisted on a level playing field. We fought for our right as a tax-paying citizen, as a citizen that follows the law. And today it's much more cumbersome because the bureaucrat that is sitting in Islamabad, he doesn't have that background, nor that training how to deal with people in the business world. They think every businessman is a cheat. So they have to be educated. And so it's, I think that today's government is at the bottom of the list as far as facilitating private sector is concerned.
These days, entrepreneurship and starting up your own business is quite the rage, at least amongst the urban youth in Pakistan. So how do you look at this space?
I think it's a wonderful challenge. It's, you know, with this software and with this internet coming in, there's a lot of opportunity, and there is, it's a growing, you know, kind of fashion. I mean, a lot of LUMS graduates have done that, you know, Rosie.com, and, you know, providing food to the people, to the needy people, picking up surplus food from restaurants and things like that. These are wonderful initiatives, and today the entry point into starting your own business, the limiting factor is your imagination. It's not resources. People find money very quickly, and there's a new breed of investors who are willing to invest money in small amounts to these entrepreneurs, youngsters, and give them an opportunity. So there is much more entrepreneurship today, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Okay, sir. You have always taken a very long-term view, for building sustainable businesses, and that's not how everybody looks at business, right? A lot of people are in it for the short term. So, did you face any challenges with any of your partners or investors in this
No,
regard,
no.
stakeholders? So, you always had like-minded partners.
Yeah, we had these were foreign companies, and foreign companies have a very long view.
Right.
They have a 15, 20, 30, 40 years time horizon. And as far as local partners are concerned, we don't take partners as such. We float the shares on the stock exchange, and there it's an open thing. If they invest, buy our shares, we are welcome. If they want to sell our shares, they can sell it. And I would say almost everybody has made money who's invested with us, so we have no grudge against them, and nor have they any grudge against them. There have been certain failures, but those failures I've taken on my own chin. The companies that ran at a loss, I took the loss myself, not the shareholders.
So on the same topic, you seem to have a knack for identifying business opportunities and picking the right sectors and right partners. And at the same time, it feels like all the big global players like Ford, Coca-Cola, Siemens, Nestle, they were actively seeking you out. So what do you think made you the partner of choice for these large global corporations?
Well, the first joint venture we had was with the Swedes, the Rousing family, who have been very generous with LUMS, as you know. I mean, you have got the Rousing Center and various other activities. That created a good example, and then we had a joint venture with Hearst, which now is Sanofi, and then Nestle came in, and many of these people who wanted to come to Pakistan came and sought us because they wanted a local partner. And they looked around and they said, let's go and find out who has done well as a joint venture partnership. And they knew that if somebody could have Nestle as a partner, and then they went to talk to Nestle, what kind of a partner is Babar Ali? Do you think we should seek him out? So that is, it's they who then took the initiative and said, would you take us as your partner?
Right.
Coca-Cola was that way. I mean, they had commissioned McKinsey to go and find a partner for themselves. And McKinsey went around Pakistan and knocked at every door where they had a joint venture partner. And they called me up, they said, we want to talk to you. And I said, okay. They said, there's an American company who wants you as a partner. And I said, who's this company? And they said, Coca-Cola. I said, why me? Said, we have carried out a study and we feel that they should have you as a partner. So this is how it's happened.
Right.
And then of course, you meet them, you talk to them, you discuss with them as to what is expected of you, what kind of role you can play, what kind of investment they expect from you, and you work it out. And we have never looked at the profitability. Coca-Cola is a world player. Ultimately it will make money. And I can tell you, for 20 years Coca-Cola ran at a loss here in this country, but we never complained against that. We said it will do all right. So now it started making money.
Right. Okay, sir. In the book, there are quite a few incidents that bear out, your negotiation skills and your deal-making skills. But I think the most interesting one is the Nestle negotiation. And the negotiations were so simple and straightforward that they kind of threw off the person on the other side of the table. So can you share some more details or context of the events that led up to that conversation?
You see, I had been running Milk Pack, that was the company, for 10 years. I was the managing director, and I knew that the milk industry here in this country is very interesting. That the milking cycle of the buffalo, especially in those days, 90% of the milk that we were buying were from buffalo. The buffalo gives less milk during summer and more milk during winter.
Okay.
Whereas the demand for milk is much higher in the summer than in the winter. It's opposite towards availability. And I also found out that there was very little money in just buying milk from the farmer, processing it, putting it and selling it, unless you had added products like baby food, a brand and some other products. So and of course we also came to the conclusion that we needed to have a milk powder plant so that the surplus milk during the winter could be converted into powder, and then you convert that powder back into liquid during summer to make up for the shortage. And I got in touch with the people who are making these plants for converting liquid into powder, and I put one condition to them. I said, you have to find me a partner. And there was a Dutch company called Stork. They brought in a Dutch company to come and talk to us. Just to give you a background, meanwhile I was, because of my contacts with the Swedes, Tetra Pak, meanwhile had grown into an international company. I went to Denmark, and I knew there was a very popular brand in Denmark called Dano, D-A-N-O. They made powder for baby food and other things. So I went to this company in Denmark, Copenhagen, and as I walked in, this fellow recognized me. He was a former Tetra Pak employee.
Okay.
So he said, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm looking for a partner. He said, don't look at us, because we are a cooperative and we are not interested in any competition in Pakistan. So don't waste your time in Denmark, you look somewhere else. So I was talking to these Dutch people who also happened to be a cooperative. And I went to the Netherlands twice to meet with them, and every time I said, can I walk around your plant? And he said, no, it's under repair, we will take you around some other time. Meanwhile, I had fed to them all information, our sales, our profitability, whatever it was. And they kept on asking for data. This negotiation was going on for 6 months. Then a very interesting thing happened. The marketing manager of Milkpack, we had a management contract for a packaging company in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. And he was there, and he lived in the same building as the Nestle representative there. Was a Swiss gentleman by the name of Wormlinger. So he told me one day, he said, sir, Wormlinger is now in Karachi as the Nestle representative, and he's asking a lot of questions. So I was very thrilled. I said, feed him everything that he wants, but make sure that there is no exaggeration. Everything that you tell him is 100% true. So a few weeks later, he said, Mr. Wormlinger says that his boss, who is in charge of the zone, looking after the whole of Asia and right up to New Zealand, a gentleman by the name of Rudy Chan, was coming to Pakistan, and he wants to meet you. I said, welcome. I said, when he comes to Lahore, take him to the area where we are collecting milk. Then take him to our factory where we are processing the milk. Then bring him to packages. Walk him through the factory. Then bring him to my room, so that I don't want to talk to him as to who we are. He has seen everything.
Right.
And he came and he said, I'm just repeating, he said, Mr. Babar Ali, I've seen what you've done. Nestle has decided to come to Pakistan. We have two options. Our first option is that if you take us as your partner. Our second option is that we'll put up a greenfield project on our own. I said, I'm looking for a partner. So he said, how can we come together? Packages was Milkpack was a publicly quoted company in which I had Tetra Pak as a shareholder. There was a Danish company who were supplying equipment. There was IFC from Washington, they were shareholders. So the four of us were 80% and 20% of the shares were in the public. So I said, I control 80% of the shares. You take 40%, we'll keep 40%. You run the company. And the price is what is on the stock exchange today.
It cannot get more transparent than this.
He fell out of his chair. How can I fall, what, I said, how long will you take? Because I said, I've been given the runaround by this Dutch company. For 6 months I've been feeding on, and they can't make up their mind. So I said, how long will you take? He said, give me 10 days. And on the 10th day, they said, our board has agreed. When the Dutch heard about it, they sent me a legal notice that you have let us down. But we had ample proof that they were not serious at all. And it's the same company that is today a part of Engro.
All right.
Of course, these people, the present people don't know the history. This is 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It has been a wonderful journey.
Yeah.
And it's not bad. I mean, when they took the shares over, it was 27 or 29 rupees. And this morning yesterday it was 6,000 rupees.
Wow.
And it had gone up to 10,000.
Right.
So that's not bad.
Yeah, that's 100x.
We haven't sold any of our shares.
Yes, brilliant. So what have been some of the tougher negotiations in your life?
You see, I treat the partner the way I want him to treat me. So there have been a number of separations, but no divorce. We were main shareholders with a company called J&P Coats, that they were the largest thread manufacturers in the world. It was a Scottish company, but that was taken over by some venture capitalists, and they wanted to strip the company, and we said, we are not in this game, and they said, can we buy you out? I said, sure. I said, sit with our accountants and do that. Then Hearst split up 3 ways. We were partners with Hearst. It had pharmaceutical company, it had chemical company, it had crop science. So they sold the chemical company to Clariant, which is a Swiss company. The pharmaceutical company went to Sanofi, and the crop science, which is pesticide, went to Bayer. So we were partners with Bayer, and Bayer came to me. They said, we already have another company in Pakistan which is 100% owned by us, and can we buy you out? I said, sure. Sit with our accountant, and whatever the figure they come up with, no negotiation. So it went through, and then I said, can I ask you to remain on our board, because I find you very useful? So I said, sure. So they had a meeting in Singapore. So we had a meeting there, and he came to me and he said, can I tell you something? You know, the way that you negotiated with us was so quick and so easy. He said, I had kept $1 million up my sleeves to pay you in case you wanted more. You know, when he was in Pakistan, I took him to Lumps. So he said, can I give this, I want to give this $1 million to Lumps. So
Great.
Lumps, if
What
you walk
better
around
use
Lumps,
of
you
that
see,
money?
you know, there is then I persuaded him, I said, give €1 million instead of So he gave €1 million, and I said, we acknowledge a donation by Bayer and Company of €1 million to the School of Science and Engineering.
So Babar Sahab, this really fast growth in digital technologies and computing capabilities, advancements in artificial intelligence, they have led to this fear in general public that a lot of the current human jobs and roles will become redundant very soon. You have lived through such transformations earlier also. So what is your view on how this fourth industrial revolution will impact how we live and have an impact on the social and economic realities of life for people?
There is a lot of new technology that has come up to help you improve your productivity, your quality and everything else, and we are adopting all those. But this doesn't mean that you have to lay off any people. And of course there is a natural attrition, people retire and you only re-engage or re-employ people when they are needed. Of course you keep on modernizing whatever equipment you have, because you have to be ahead of your competition if you really want to survive. And no, but this does not in any case frighten me, because though it's black box as far as I'm concerned, I mean I can use my telephone but not too much. But I mean, and of course we are engaging people who can talk the language, today's language of these various things that you've mentioned. But we have to be, follow the flow of the new changes that are coming in, and you can't stop progress.
Right. So on that topic, what are some of the skills or traits which cut across, which are universal or timeless when it comes to being a successful businessman or a leader?
One is you have to be honest to yourself and to everybody else. You have to pay your taxes. You've got to treat your colleagues as partners, not as employees. And work hard. You have to make sure that when you are buying things, your supplier makes money, otherwise you will not have a supplier for long. If you sell things, you've got to be competitive, otherwise nobody buy your products, not only in price, in quality also. So it's a big challenge to balance all this. I keep on telling people, everybody talks about supply chain, and I tell them that supply chain doesn't mean that you are the only successful person and you screw up your suppliers and your customers. Everybody has to survive and make money. And so that's the thing that we live by.
So who amongst the current crop of entrepreneurs and business leaders in Pakistan reminds you of your own passion and drive?
No, at my age I don't mix too much, so I'm sure there are many people who are doing much better than I did at the early years, and of course today they are doing much better than us. We wish them well, but I don't spend my time on comparing myself to anybody else, because I feel everybody is better than me.
Right. So Babar Saab, what drives Syed Babar Ali and how has that evolved over the years?
What drives me?
Yeah.
People like you sitting across the table and asking me this question,
Oh,
because
wow.
I'm seeing you maybe after 20 years.
Yes.
And I still feel so energized that you have time for me and asking these questions. So this is what keeps me alive.
Okay, brilliant. So how different is Pakistan today from what you might have envisioned 30, 40 years back? So how has Pakistan, played out in the last 30, 40 years?
We've done everything to destroy this country.
And is there hope?
Hope in people like you. You have to build it up. I've tried to do all the damage I could. I thought that the best way that I could contribute was to have an institution like LUMS, which will produce the future generation who will go and make a difference. And I hope they are. You are one of them.
Thank you, sir. In all your life, have you ever fallen prey to your ego in a
No.
way that you regretted later?
I have no ego. Ego is poisonous.
Yeah, that's the undoing of, all the good that you do.
No.
Okay, one last question, Syed Babar Saab. What are your favorite books on leadership or business or life generally?
Well, I've read many biographies. I've admired people. I've learnt a lot from them. But I've been very lucky. I've met some good people that I could interact with, ask questions, seek guidance, and so it's been a very rewarding journey. But no one book solves the problem except the Quran.
Right.
And I am reading Iqbal a lot these days, and I find that I wish I'd spent more time on Iqbal before, but one is always learning.
Thank you so much, Babar Saab,
No, it's a real
for
pleasure.
your time.
I hope I'll see you again.
I hope to see you again soon. Thank you, sir.
Our youngsters of today don't like to take orders, they don't like to follow rules, they don't want to work for someone else. Thus entrepreneurship has come along.
Well, that's a good thing, that if you want to be an entrepreneur, but you've got to then have the ability to fly on your own. Don't look at your parents to come and bail you out every time, but to feel that you have a license to do what you want without any discipline, that is not acceptable.